And there were a lot of us going into 23 that were nervous about, is this going to be the year that with the rest of us get to see that domino fall with the variant virus? Knock on wood, we, at least at this point, haven't seen that. Jerry, you'll hear me talk a couple of times about MSHMP, or the Morrison Swine Health Monitoring Program, as we chat about 23. But that program looks at about half of the U.S. sow herd, and it measures the disease status of about half of all the sows in the U.S. And it's the best information we have in terms of estimating the prevalence of diseases like PRRS. And MSHMP's been around since 2009, so we're going on 14 years of data. And as crazy as this sounds, we had probably the lowest incidence of new PRRS infections on sow farms in the calendar 23 year that we have ever had since the beginning of MSHMP. So I think that tells us that, biosecurity definitely works.
Swine it.
Hi, and welcome to our latest edition of Swine it Podcast. I'm Jerry PRRS, your host, and today we have a special guest, Dr. Clayton Johnson. Dr. Johnson is Director of Health at Carthage Veterinary Service. Dr. Johnson, I appreciate you coming to our podcast today.
Well, thanks, Jerry. I appreciate you having me on.
Very good. Maybe to start off, as some of our viewers may not know you, but just tell us a little bit about your background and what was your process to where you are here today?
Sure. Jerry, I grew up a little bit in both the veterinary business and the pig business. My dad is a mixed animal veterinarian in West Central Illinois, and I grew up as kind of a clinic rat. Dad's classic small town mixed animal vet. So when I was a kid, lots of diversified farms in the area. And typically Dad would spend his days doing farm calls. And then in the evenings, the clinic was open most every evening. And that's when they do the small animal appointments, the surgeries, the sick dogs and cats, spays and neuters, vaccines, that sort of stuff. And we didn't ever own pigs, but Dad had grown up on a farm, and I realized pretty quickly that was a great opportunity to spend time with Dad, was going to farms with him. And Jerry, you might appreciate this, but we still raised most of the pigs outside at that point. There were some pigs inside in confinement, but the vast majority of the pigs were just raised on dirt lots. And the vets did the procedures. The vets did the vaccinating, the castration, many rupture repairs. The vets would come to the farm and do all that stuff with a batch of feeder pigs. And so as soon as I was big enough to help and hold, assist would be the fancy word, but hold those pigs, I was working. And through that, I got to know the farmers. And as you know, pig production is hard work, and they were always looking for help even back then. And so they would ask me to help on, weekends and stuff like that, even when Dad wasn't coming out to work there. If they had pigs to move, or, once they moved them inside, if they had barns to clean, that sort of stuff, I got a lot of jobs that way. So in that way, I worked with pigs my whole life, really. I went to vet school at the University of Illinois, and I knew, Jerry, that I really liked working with pigs, and just lots of population animal medicine characteristics, the stats, the economics of pig production. I really enjoyed all that, and was lucky enough there at Illinois early on to get to know the mash-offs as a company, and then certainly as a family. Did an internship at the mash-offs after my first year in vet school. It was an amazing experience. I mean, an unbelievable experience. Got to know some of the leadership of the company, and really a ton of respect for the leadership, the family, the whole organization. Was everything I could have ever dreamt for a job. And then I got lucky enough, Jerry, that when I graduated from vet school, Mash-Offs actually had a job opening. They wanted to hire a vet on the staff. And at that point, it was still pretty weird to go straight into 100% swine-focused medicine. When I graduated, it was still most common to go do mixed animal for a little while, get some swine clients and kind of build up your reputation, and then eventually you could go do swine full-time. But I was lucky enough that, I'd had that internship experience with Mash-Offs. I knew they were a good fit for me. They'd gotten to know me well enough that they were willing to take a bet on me. And that's really where I spent the first 8 years of my career. 8 amazing years where I learned a ton about health across all different production types, but also the economics of pig production, and particularly finishing. Mash-Offs as a large pig producer is heavily weighted towards being a finishing business. Learned a lot about pig flows and just tons of stuff. And then had the opportunity, Jerry, about 8 years ago now, to come join Carthage Vet Service. And my interest in being involved on the business side, just kept growing and growing and growing. And as a private practice, you have the opportunity for ownership in the practice and providing some strategic direction and guidance and all things that are hard to do in a large pig company when your last name is not on the pig production company. And so it really kind of leads me to here. I've worked with pigs my entire life, really never regretted a whole day, definitely regretted a few minutes of it every once in a while, because it's a hard job no matter what role you're in the industry. But I've really enjoyed the journey up until now and look forward to seeing where it goes in the future.
Want to save up to 25% in labor time when cleaning your barns? With MS Top Foam Power, you effectively remove all historical pollution. MS Top Foam Power ensures the surface is perfectly clean and ready for disinfection. Find your dealer at www.msgold.eu.
Wow, that's Clayton. That's pretty awesome. I mean, you've actually been a veterinarian in training since a small kid, really.
Yeah.
And you got started, and interest grew, and it's. And I like the part, I really respect the part you've been on the production side of that with a production company, being a production vet, and there is economics that play into some of those decisions that we have to make. So it gives you kind of a holistic view of the whole industry and how things work together and how we meet some of these challenges as a veterinarian. Well, very good. I think just kind of what might want to just start out with is just looking at the year in past and maybe taking just briefly kind of a state of the union, where we're at today, what we've, how we got to where we are today and this past year, and just kind of talk a little bit about, just recap some of the diseases, some of the things where those are at.
You bet, Jerry. I think it makes sense to start with PRRS. As we rewind 12 months ago and we were coming into 2023, everybody was pretty nervous about what was going to happen with PRRS. The variant 144 strain was not new at that point. It had been around for a little while, but not everybody had had a taste of it. It had kind of stayed really on the western half of the production in the U.S., I would say. And a lot of us fortunate to be on the east side of the Mississippi River, we had heard the horror stories, right? And I think there have been those who have gone out of their way to try and calm down the horror stories. Scott D, BI, they worked together on a pretty big research project early on to settle everybody down and say, look, this is PRRS and it sucks. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not good, but it's another PRRS strain, right? And we've seen these things happen before, whether it's 144, 174, 118.2, pick your cut pattern. We've seen viruses emerge every 3 to 4 years and kind of sweep their way across the industry, and be challenging, but just that, challenging, right? Not a new Superman virus that's just PRRS. It sucks, but it's PRRS. And there were a lot of us going into 23 that were nervous about, is this going to be the year that with the rest of us get to see that domino fall with the variant virus? Knock on wood, we, at least to this point, haven't seen that. Jerry, you'll hear me talk a couple of times about MSHMP, or the Morrison Swine Health Monitoring Program, as we chat about 23. But that program looks at about half of the U.S. sow herd, and it measures the disease status of about half of all the sows in the U.S. And it's the best information we have in terms of estimating the prevalence of diseases like PRRS. And MSHIP's been around since 2009. So we're going on 14 years of data. And as crazy as this sounds, we had probably the lowest incidence of new PRRS infections on sow farms in the calendar 23 year that we have ever had since the beginning of MSHIP. So I think that tells us that, biosecurity definitely works. We can prevent PRRS. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm also not saying it's cheap, right? But the reality is things like air filtration, they are effective. Getting away from rendering, it's effective. Basic shower in, shower out procedures, disinfecting our supplies coming in. Those things work. Again, not necessarily easy or cheap, but they work, and we do control our own destiny when it comes to disease outbreaks. So that's really good to see. On the discouraging side, Jerry, with PRRS, that's the fact remains we're still putting out a lot of PRRS positive pigs. Well, this was our best year. That's kind of like we're the number 8 or the number 9 hitter in the batting order, and it's like, well, we had a good average compared to the other 8 or 9 hitters in the batting order. Well, that's not a good spot in the batting order. If you look at that same MSHIP report, they estimate what percentage of the wean pigs are being weaned PRRS positive, and it's at basically the highest levels we've ever seen. So those two things don't match very well together. While we've been pretty good in 23 at keeping new PRRS strains out of the sow farms, we're still putting out a lot of pigs that are infected. So that tells me that folks either are not eliminating, they're just choosing to live with it, which is discouraging if that's the case, or they're not having a lot of success eliminating it. But I would tell you that within the clients we work with here at Carthage, the latter hasn't been the case. We've been able to eliminate viruses. And again, not easy, not cheap. I don't want to oversimplify this, but where there's a will, there's a way, and we've been able to get through it. That's kind of my summary of the PRRS side in 23, Jerry. I certainly welcome any comments or additions to that you got from things that you hear in the field.
Well, I mean, the PRRS side, knock on wood, again, we haven't seen 144. And your point, if we got PRRS positive pigs, I want to get your thoughts too. What does that cost a producer? The pig's not dying, but there is a cost to that immune system now is activated and chronically stimulated, and there's a cost there. But I'd say, and one thing I would say about the market, I think genetically we have made, productivity advances. And we're in a state where we really probably have too many sows in the United States if we're healthy. If we've got good health, we've really got too many animals. And I think that's what we've seen this past year. The health we didn't see the PRRS like we did previously. And so we've really got too many animals, and now we're getting more pigs per sow. Yeah, so that's part of the issue that we're in today is that we've just got too many sows with the productivity that we have. And I think that's what we're seeing. So,
yeah, we've certainly got some outstanding productivity, and it's amazing how things can work against you, right? And what I mean by that is we've never had the levels of wean pigs per litter as what we have right now. Farms, for a farm to wean 12 per litter, it seems like is not asking a ton of the farm anymore, right? They're having 14 and a half, a lot of times 15 born alive. So weaning 12 is not knocking it out of the park. But when you go into 2023 and you wean 12 and you got to feed all those pigs, the price of corn that we had to feed last year, man, that racks up a bunch of expense in a hurry. And even if we'd have seen market prices that were, the best we'd ever seen, I don't know that we'd have been able to really soften the blow as much as we would hope to. Just, the cost of raising a pig, $200 to raise a market pig, Jerry. I mean, that's a crazy, crazy, crazy number for 2022 and 2023. And I'm honestly amazed that as many producers have stayed in the game as have.
Yeah, I think there's some tough conversations going on. To your point, commodities where they're at, and we're getting good productivity, but we're really not weaning that many more pigs. And I think we're at a biological benchmark where that sow really is not capable of taking in enough nutrients to wean more than 12 pigs. I mean, and I think they've made some improvements genetically. I think we've got sows that are eating a little better, but that's just been a tough. The graph is going way high on pigs born alive, but we're really not capitalizing on that productivity by weaning more pigs. So that's why I'd say we're at a benchmark here. I think we're a threshold, and I don't know. It's going to take some more technologies or strategies to push beyond that, I think.
I like using the analogy of a race car and the driver and the pit crew when it comes to pig production. And if you think of the sow as our engine, right, as really the motor that drives us in this race, I think we're at a point, Jerry, where we have made improvements in the motor, improvements in the genetics, and the rest of the car, the rest of the pit crew, the driver, everybody, we haven't kept up. And I think we're poised for somebody to have a bit of a revolution, for somebody to figure out something different with housing, to your point, on the resources the sows need to consume to be able to deliver on their genetic potential. We hold them so back by not having them eat as much as they should in lactation, right? 3 months out of the year, depending on where you're at, maybe more. It's so hot in those farrowing barns that we aren't putting enough fuel in the engine to keep that thing revved up where we want it to be. And to be blunt, we as veterinarians are going through a lot of the same, curriculum and training as we have for decades and decades and decades. And we're seeing that, the molecular advances in genetics are just outpacing us. So as a pit crew, that's typically what I think of as the pit crew. It's people like me, it's the nutritionist, the people in facility design. We're the ones that are trying to do maintenance on the car. And man, we're trying to do maintenance on a machine that we've never seen before. And I think, one of two things will happen. We'll either say that sow is just so amazing that, we need to toggle it back some, right? No. Let's go back to a later model engine and something we know how to work on. But I don't think that's the direction we're going to go. I think we're going to choose the other fork in the road, which is the rest of us are going to have to get smarter. Or we're going to have to do something crazy, put these sows in air-conditioned barns or something like that, where the restriction is no longer the environment, where we can truly express that genetic potential, because it's amazing.
Yeah, most of the housing out here is a good 20 plus years old, and we were dealing with an entirely different animal. Now they made sows longer, so they get additional teats, and we've got animals that probably only fit in the crate as a gilt, and then her next parity on, she's there's not enough space. It's just because we haven't, we've got the facilities that are 20 plus years old, so there's going to have to be some adjustments there, to your point, or we got to figure out some way that we can, mitigate some of these areas or issues like space. But I don't know what's going to be. It's almost like you said, we've got the race car, and we just don't have the support system to drive that race car and get out of it that Cadillac that we have.
Yeah.
So now talking about so PRRS, of course, is the big dollar issues. What about some of the other diseases like PED? That was the one I just couldn't think of. That seems to be one of the biggest ones in our area. We really fight PED, it seems, every year. Of course, flu. But what is your take on some of those diseases as you look back in 2023?
Yeah, so I'll start with flu. Seen plenty of flu activity this fall. Now, I would say it's been a normal year for flu activity, but particularly in Iowa, we kind of see this repeated situation every year. We're about in September, early October. PRRS kind of starts in flu starts in western Iowa and marches its way across the state. And I'd say that's went off as expected. We've seen more and more of the gamma cluster of flu strains this year. Delta was kind of the dominant flu strain there for a while. But it seems like Gamma has kind of evolved to at least rival that as like a 1B. It certainly hadn't replaced it. There's still plenty of Delta out there, but Gamma deserves as much attention as Delta at this point, probably. And has seen a little bit of uptick in pandemic strains of influenza, as well as an uptick in the alpha H1 clusters. Now, I would tell you, I think most people are pretty happy with their flu control, especially people that are using custom vaccine platforms on the sows. They're able to get the flu out of the sows. So you get a sow farm that gets infected with flu, you don't have to live with it in the wean pigs for forever. Through autogenous, mostly autogenous vaccines, but some commercial too, we've been able to eliminate it out of sow farms pretty well. And keeping sows immunized has really helped to minimize the lost pregnancies, the bad conception rates that have come with flu outbreaks in the past. So I think people are pretty happy with where they're at on the flu side, especially if they're using some of those custom vaccine programs. Mycoplasma, Jerry, I hear lots of people happy with their mycoplasma elimination program. Nothing formal as an industry, but just more and more producers. If you got to shut down to get rid of a PED, a PRRS, particularly PRRS, because it's got such a long herd closure associated with it, a lot of people are trying to do two birds with one stone. If you shut down for PRRS, let's try and get mycoplasma out as well. And some people have tried some unique antibiotic approaches, try to time the antibiotics earlier, use a little different combination there so that the herd closure isn't as long. So there's not as much pain associated with the elimination. And it seems like we're starting to make some progress there. So I'd say good news on the mycoplasma front as well. We're just flat out seeing a lot less disease because we're starting with a lot less infected pigs. PED, Jerry, I would tell you in the Midwest has been unbelievably quiet. And the MSHIP data would back that up. I looked at it before we got on this call, Jerry, and in the last 3 months, there has only been 3 weeks. We report every week, and there's only been 3 weeks with any reports of PED getting into a sow farm on MSHIP. Only 3 weeks out of the last 3 months, and those months were September, October, and November.
Yeah.
Now the shoe could drop, right? I mean, it could fall here on us any time. So knock on wood as I say that.
That's good news, Jeff.
Well, to me, it tells me we can take this thing further with PED. There is an opportunity to eradicate PED from the United States. I have no idea how we put legs under that program. Because there's really not one group that's a resource to come to the industry and say, we're going to collectively eradicate this disease. Here's the plan. Here's your role within the plan. Here's the timeline for when your region's going to eliminate. I don't think, Jerry, we need to worry about the show pigs or the people that are inoculating gilts for PED, at least in the first year or two. Let those folks do what they do. I don't think there's a lot of show pigs getting PED that are causing infections in our sow farms. Right? It's the finishing pigs that go to the packing plant. That's where all the transmission happens. And so if we can shut that down, I think we protect our commercial industry. And if we can shut that down for a year or two, then those folks that have been exposing their gilts, I think they'll look at the results and say, yeah, I probably don't need to expose my gilts anymore because practically we've pushed it out of the commercial industry. It's easy for me to conceptualize that, Jerry, but when I think about, we've got National Pork Board, we've got National Pork Producers Council, we've got SHIP, we've got SHIC, we've got the state animal health officials, we've got the USDA, the FDA. The reality is, even though all the tax money, all the producer dues that go to all those things, none of those groups are really resourced or organized to do a disease eradication program. So to me, I feel like there's huge opportunity there to grab the bull by the horns and do something about it, to meaningfully change our future for PED and practice disease eradication, which unfortunately we may have to practice under real world circumstances at some point. But I just struggle to connect the dots, Jerry, with who's that organization or that entity that can come forward and deliver a credible plan that people will buy into and ultimately go execute. And obviously, there's got to be some accountability there. I rattled off all those acronyms and entities before. And at the end of the day, pork producers don't report to any of those, at least not when it comes to PED management. So it's an idea, and I think it's one the industry would benefit from. But how to get traction, I'm at a loss, just like everybody else.
Just thinking, you made a good point about how we seem to see less incidences when we have a disease that really everybody focuses on. And I just wonder if it's just all of a sudden now everybody really, gets serious about biosecurity, and they start actually doing what they have on paper, and it's actually being executed out in the field. And it's kind of like went through COVID and the flu. After we came out, I think people were just more conscious of not being around, and when they're sick, not being exposing other people. So I think that gives us some hope that probably a lot of this is controllable. It's not, within reason. We can actually put in some places and actually get some plans together that if everybody, pitches in and does their part, we'll all work together and get some of these diseases behind us. So I think it's because I think at the end of the day, it's a lot of us we have biosecurity plans, but in many cases, what is executed is not necessarily the plan that we have on paper. So.
To me, Jerry, there's so many intangible benefits from getting rid of a disease like PED. If you've got pigs that are sick with PED, it's just as miserable as having pigs that are sick with PRRS. Pigs that are sick, it's no fun to go to a pig barn when you know they are sick. It's no fun for me, and I'm only going to be there for a couple of hours, and then I'm on to the next one, right? And I can remember working in those barns. Man, I mean, raising healthy pigs is fun. It is. It's just there's not a better day. But raising sick pigs, no matter how good you are at raising pigs, is miserable. I mean, everybody feels defeated. And, intangible things like labor, right? I don't know anybody who's in a great labor situation right now. And if your first day on the job is walking into a nursery that's loaded with scour and PED pigs, good night. That's not a very fun introduction to the pig industry, right? And so if we can take bad days away, think about that, what that does, not only for the well-being of the animals, because they're not sick anymore, but the well-being of our caretakers, that they get to actually practice production principles and not spend all their time washing their hands in between rooms and changing boots and doing all the things you got to do when you got sick pigs.
Yeah, it's hard to get. We had a couple instances of PED where we had to wean down, and it's no fun. Every day you go in, it's really demoralizing. You're working hard, and those pigs, you come in, and you have the mortality that you have, and you just, gosh, what can I do different? And you just pulling straws, and then you get up the next day and you go do the same thing. It's just, it's like you're getting beat down, but you got to keep getting back up, and it is a tough situation. It's not a lot of fun. To your point, yeah, it's fun when the pigs are thriving and you're coming in and you feel, somewhat like you're making an impact.
Yeah, but you're producing.
Yeah, that's right. So it does impact the caregivers for sure when we have, health issues.
Yeah.
But, so I guess we're at the end of the year and we're looking back. What do you think? Look at your crystal ball. What do you think is going to happen in this new year? And what do you look for? Some things that might, some technology or some areas we might improve, or we stuck with some of the things as we linger and go leaving 2023?
Well, let's start with a positive here, Jerry. There is a new vaccine platform that's come on the market here in the last couple of months. It is a prescription autogenous vaccine, which means down the road we'll have some flexibility with different products that come out of it. But initially, there is a rotavirus vaccine that is going to be one of the first components of that prescription vaccine platform. And it's from a company called Medgene, Medgene. And I'm not here to advertise anything for anybody, but I would tell you that the industry has long needed more rotavirus vaccine options. The scours are a common challenge on every farm, and rotavirus is not one of those diseases that we're going to eradicate. It's every pig's infected with it. It's just too easily transmissible from sow to pig. Not practical for us to eradicate anytime soon. So we got to deal with it. And we've historically dealt with it without a lot of vaccine options. Well, we got a chance to do some field trials in 2023 with that vaccine. And they're anecdotal, right? It's we put the vaccine in and here's what happened. But I would tell you, in my experience, and really talking to lots of other vets that see a lot of pigs across a lot of geographies and a lot of genetics and a lot of health statuses and nutrition programs, everybody's had promising results, let's say, with that vaccine. So I think that's really exciting because rotavirus is the most common cause of baby pig diarrhea in the United States. Just about every sow farm has some rotavirus scours on it at any given time. And especially for the bigger units, the 5,000s, the 6,000s, the 10,000 head sow farms, it seems like you get more scours the bigger those farms get. And knock on wood, that one appears to be something we need to look at. I'll put it that way. And again, I'm not here to advertise for anybody, but that's probably a product and a new tool in the toolbox that I'm super excited about going into 2024 here. And I don't know if that's something you've had any experience with out on the East Coast there, Jerry, or not.
Yeah, it's kind of a hit and miss. You can have it in the nursery, and this group pigs do fine, and then you've got pretty low mortality, and then the next group it spurs up, and so it's really I would say pretty good description of the prevalence. I would say like I said, it's not getting the attention PRRS and some of these other PED, but it is a silent killer, and it is impacting a lot of nurseries, and we lose a lot of pigs for sure. So yeah, I would say that's pretty prevalent and pretty impactful.
Yeah. Also on the glass half full front, Jerry, on new tools in the toolbox, there's a decent chance we'll get some sort of thumbs up or thumbs down on the PRRS resistant pig coming in 2024. And that's still in the regulatory approval process. So we haven't gotten the firm feedback from the regulators that they're willing to approve it or not willing to approve it. But it seems like we should get some certainty there at some point in 2024 on what that'll mean. Obviously, if it gets approved, the producers will be very excited about that. To our earlier discussion, raising healthy pigs is fun, and if you're an unhealthy pig, PRRS is probably a part of it for you right now in the United States. And if we've got what appears to be a bulletproof solution to that, at least for today's modern PRRS viruses, producers are going to be very excited to get that. Obviously, there's a little bit of caution there, just in the fact that just because it gets approved regulatory-wise doesn't mean producers will get to use it, right? Unless you harvest your own pigs and you sell that meat, you're a little bit at the mercy of what the person who harvests your pigs is going to allow you to use. So, PRRS being a classic example of a product that you would sure think over the last year or two had wildly positive ROI for pig producers, right? With feed prices where they were and with hog prices being actually decent compared to historical, PRRS would have been something that would have made producers a ton of money if they were able to use it. But the reality is we are not allowed to use it. It's legal to use, but our customers tell us they won't buy the pigs if we use it. And so will the PRRS resistant genetics, will that go down that same path? I think everybody's very interested to hear about that. But I certainly don't have any insight into what that's going to look like. But if your glass half full, well, the PRRS resistant pig could be here. If your glass half empty, well, maybe it'll be here, but the packers may or may not be willing to let us use it. And then the other glass half full look at it would be, even if it gets approved and the packers say, heck yeah, throttle down, let's go get rid of PRRS, you're talking about years before that gets through the pipeline, because there won't be gilts for sale in 2024 no matter what. You're going to be able to get semen, and you're going to be able to start using semen. But the way that technology works is both the mom and the dad really have to be homozygous, they call it, but ultimately they need to be double recessive for that trait. And you're going to start out with semen that is correct. The semen is PRRS resistant, but you got to get your female population, you got to get that turned over till they're fully resistant before you can actually produce a pig that's fully resistant. So we're, even if the throttle, the pipeline got turned on next year completely, it's realistically, the end of the 2020s before we've got massive amounts of those pigs that would hit slaughter plants. So exciting, great to see technology improving. But I would say, cautious optimism for what that means for us going forward. And practically, other than just some good news in 2024, I don't know that it's going to impact anybody's bottom line immediately in 2024.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like just because the technology makes sense that it's good. It's good for our numbers. It's good for our production. Doesn't mean that we're going to put that tool in our toolbox. We may have to. We've got some roadblocks, and invariably it's like you said, it's the processor. Is he going to pay for that? Is he won't even want that? And down to the consumer. Is the consumer going to accept that technology? And if they're not, then it's not something that we're going to be able to use. And then another point is if we eradicate PRRS, now we've got all more pigs hitting the market. There's only a certain amount of shackle space, so there's going to be some consolidation. There's going to be some farms that we're going to cut some sows for sure. Yeah. So some people are going to win, some people are going to lose, and so that's another. When all those pigs on the market, that's not going to be good for price for sure if you're a producer. So yeah, there's some issues there, kind of like with the AI. We start replacing people. At some point, maybe we have more people than we got jobs, and that's an issue we never thought about. But thinking about trucks driving themselves, who would imagine that we'd be able to operate without truckers?
And I've been fortunate, Jerry, to travel the world. Dr. Tim Lola always says it's amazing where a stinky pig can take you. And, a stinky pig has taken me to places in Southeast Asia where they have that exact situation, Jerry, where they still farm 1 or 2 acres per person by hand. And it's not because they don't know about tractors and combines and all that equipment, right? It's not because they don't know about modern seed genetics. It's because they understand that conundrum you just laid forward is that, yes, I could implement that technology and it would make my production better. But then what do I do for all these people that need jobs? I got hundreds of millions of people, farmers, and that's their job. What do I do for those folks?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is something that I think we're going to see. An issue that we're going to see down the pipeline is we're going to figure out some of these issues, and we're going to have more pigs, and what are we going to do when that happens, and how are we going to, I was thinking about some technologies. What are some other technologies you think that are encouraging going forward that, some of the cameras and being able to maybe predict when be a little bit ahead of the curve when an animal starts to get sick. Maybe a sow is starting to limp, and then maybe we can treat that sow, earlier or get in front of that before it's too late and we have to euthanize. What are some promising technologies you think that might help your job, as you go out and try to treat populations of animals?
Yep. Well, it's a great question, Jerry, and I do think there's a lot of exciting stuff there. And for a lot of these things, we tend to get consumed by things we can't control, like is the PRRS-resistant pig going to get approved, right? Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't, but the reality is I should spend about 0 time worried about that because I have no impact on it, right?
Yeah.
The camera technology you bring up is one that I have an impact on because I would tell you, Jerry, I think there's a ton of technology that's out there that we just aren't applying. The people that are inventing these, newer motion sensor cameras, the thermal cameras that can read temperature, the cameras that can evaluate, the animal's movement and those sorts of things, their gait, they're not making those for pig farmers, right? The people working in Silicon Valley, they don't have a pig farm in Iowa or North Carolina or Illinois top of their mind when they're making that stuff. But they're making the technology that we can harvest, that we can use. And, no different than the farmer that got the Model T and turned it into a tractor, right? The Model T wasn't made for that purpose, but somebody was clever enough to say, okay, I can apply that tool in a different way. And I think for clever and progressive producers, those opportunities are out there. Cameras that are as basic as just monitoring and auditing biosecurity practices. I've got some experience, Jerry, using some of the cell phone trail cameras. I like to be outdoors and I like to hunt. And it hit me at some point, I've got these trail cameras that are out and they take pictures of nice big deer and I see them on my phone. I wish I was sitting in a tree stand. And why don't I put that up at the loadout? And it can send me videos of the loadout. It can send me pictures of the loadout. I talk about how important that is. When I go to a farm, they're generally not loading pigs, right? So I can't audit it. I can't see how it works. But the videos allow me to watch every loadout at any farm that I want to. And I can, if I watch it in the rear view mirror, meaning I'll watch it, yesterday's loadout today, I can speed them up and watch them in fast forward. So it may take me an hour to sit there and watch the loadout, but I can actually get that done in 20 minutes if I watch the video on 3x speed. You know what I'm saying? And so I think for just basic auditing, the cameras are plug and play. Use them, put them in. The eye in the sky doesn't lie, and it's a great teaching tool, accountability tool, training tool all over the barn. I think for identifying sick pigs, I think there's a ton of opportunity there. I think that's a layer deeper on, a producer probably can't buy the cameras off the shelf today and just put them up like they can to audit, biosecurity or stuff like that, where we just need the video. To my knowledge, there's not a camera that's sensitive enough to, take the body temperature and identify the one pig that's got a fever. We aren't that good yet, but, producers can probably get there. And if they're waiting on Silicon Valley to produce it for you, I don't think that's going to happen. You need to dig into what human medicine is doing. Think about other countries and what sort of camera technologies they use to develop to identify people with fevers at the borders. Because over the last couple of years, that had a lot of value, right? If you were a country that was locked down for COVID, but you were letting some people fly into your country, I guarantee you those cameras staring at us coming off the planes, they knew if we had a fever or not, right? So somebody digging into that technology and then replicating that will be a huge labor savings. Because what does our labor spend most of their time doing today? Same thing that I did when I was a kid. You look for something to do, meaning you walk through that nursery and you identify what pigs are sick and need care. We spend 80% of our time looking for the 5% of the animals we want to do something with that day. And that's not a good use of time, right? So where cameras can help us to identify those individual animals that need help, I think they're going to be very valuable. And if nothing else, they give us insight into what's going on in that barn overnight when we're not there. Diseases like mycoplasma, those pigs cough in the morning, but they may not cough the rest of the day. Well, if you're farming in the morning and you don't come in the barn until 10 o'clock, you may not see anything. And, those 2-3 dead pigs you're dragging out, you're like, I don't get it. These pigs are healthy. Well, they're showing clinical signs of disease. They're just not showing it when you're there. And the cameras, the technology, it doesn't sleep. It doesn't take breaks. It doesn't rest. It's there. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, weekends, just like the pigs. So it's a can of worms there, Jerry, because I'm pretty passionate that there's big opportunities there. And I'll hit on what I said before. We take 80% of our labor today, and that is spent finding the things that need to be done on the farm that day. And then 20% of our actual labor time is doing the work on 5% of the animals that need it. If we can use the technology to identify the animals that need the help and then use 100% of our available labor time to help those animals, man, I think we can really make a bunch of improvements in a hurry if we can figure that out.
Yeah, if we can take and just identify where it is so we're not spending all that time trying to figure out where the problem is, we've definitely got enough time to fix the problem and to alleviate. Yeah, I like your point about the cameras. A lot of times for biosecurity, a lot of times we're asking people to do things when there's nobody around, and we know sometimes there's nobody watching. It's easy to do the easy thing and not do the thing that you're supposed to do sometimes and wear boots. And so if you got a camera there, it makes people a lot more honest and just to have an accountability that
Yep.
we're actually doing these processes. So I think even going down into the farrowing room, you got cameras there. You can watch processes and make sure things are done correctly. To your point about identifying sick animals, we got to figure out there's a point where we got an opportunity in that animal that is a mortality. We could have done something probably earlier if we had known and had picked that out. But once it's gone 2 weeks, a lot of times there's no opportunity there. We lost the opportunity.
There's rarely sudden death in a pig, right? Sudden can happen in a lot of animals. It's we get hit by a car.
Yeah.
It's trauma. That's sudden death. There is unexpected death in a pig.
Yeah.
But you post a lot of those quote unquote good pigs that we find dead in the general population. You open them up and their insides are just riddled with disease lesions. But those pigs they're tough, and we are a predator. The pig is a prey animal, and that's not lost on the pig. So they naturally try to hide those diseases from us. You mentioned the sow with the limp, right? The last thing in the world the sow with the limp wants a predator to know is that she's limping, because the predator will seek to pick off the weak, right? The injured. And those pigs, that's hardwired in their existence. So they're always going to try to hide those things from us. It's the opposite of human medicine, where the patient's telling you what the problem is. The pig not only isn't telling you, they're actively trying to hide it.
Yeah. Yeah. You walk through a sow barn, it seems like a lot of times you see a sow that's not eating, but you get back and you start really looking, there's generally a structural problem. She's just not getting up. She doesn't feel good. And so she's not consuming the amount of feed that she needs to.
Yep.
And pretty soon she goes through that lactation, she loses a lot of weight, and then she's out, she's on a slippery slope to leaving the herd. So, yeah, if we can figure out, it's amazing. And you may correct me, but there's about 40% of the mortalities, sow mortalities. We really don't have an explanation for that mortality.
Yeah.
So if we could just figure out what's happening, it's hard to solve a problem if you don't know what the cause of the problem is.
That's exactly right. You're guessing at that point. If you don't know the cause and you're trying to make it better, you're just guessing. You're buying a lottery ticket, hoping you scratch it and you get the right answer.
Feed flow is changing the way the swine industry sees feed. As the world's only on-pipe feed sensor, feed flow tells you exactly how much feed is being delivered to your animals, so you can be sure that every pig in your barn is well fed and growing. With industry-leading precision and up-to-the-minute real-time data and alerts, feed flow is a simple and affordable way to improve production outcomes across your organization. Feed is too expensive to ignore. Try feed flow today. It's time for our famous 3. An animal nutrition technology company offering innovative products and new applications for the swine industry. The combination of AB Vista enzymes, technical services, and nutrition expertise provides the industry with new opportunities to further improve production efficiencies. Fiber is receiving renewed interest due to its influence on the microbiome, and AB Vista has brought together research experts to discuss the industry's knowledge of fiber functionality and to introduce a Stimbiotic, targeted to improve fiber digestion. To request access, contact NAM at abvista.com. That's NAM at abvista.com.
Well, very good. Well, Clayton, we could probably talk forever, but time's drawing nigh here, and I got 3 questions we always ask our guests at the end. And so the first question is, what is your favorite resource that you use?
Well, Jerry, I'm partial to the Swine Health Black Belt podcast, but I would say anything from the Swine It group of resources. And, in all honesty, I don't think there's one resource, Jerry, that I like to use. I try to peruse lots of different things, and certainly not the least of which is just one-on-one conversations with people at the farm dealing with pigs every day.
Yeah, that's I found that to be true. If you want to figure out how to solve something, go to the person that works on the barn. Many times they have the answers. They just never been asked, and they're there every day. Like you said, if we were there every day, we would know why that group pig died, or why that, they were having issues. But those people, I learned so much from talking to the people that are on the, front line.
Same here.
Very good. Well, and secondly, who's been maybe your biggest influence in your career? Most influential person?
Oh, I
I
mean,
know that's a tough question when you get down to one person. We all have multiple influences.
yeah, yeah, multiple influences. I had a grandpa, Jerry, who was extremely influential to me. He was a career Army officer, and really everything I know in life about kind of command presence and how to have a leadership presence around other people, I learned from my grandpa. My dad, who is a mixed animal veterinarian, really taught me how to respect people, how to listen, and try to help people solve bad situations. My mom really taught me a lot of the value of hard work, particularly as it comes to education. Success is when opportunity meets preparation. And you don't ever get to define when the opportunity shows up, but you better be prepared when it shows up, because if you're not going to be successful. I mentioned my time at the Mashoffs, but from the Mashoff family, Ken and Julie, Dave and Karen, all of them, to see how successful they've been as individuals and business people, and then how open they are with their employees, really taught me a lot about, you hear the term servant leadership, but they genuinely cared about their people, and I couldn't have asked for any better mentorship when it comes from how to be a good owner there. All the technical people I worked with there at Mashoffs, Steve Quick, who was my boss for many years and taught me a ton about finishing production. Jim Lowe, who was a veterinarian associated with the Mashoff for years and years and years, and I learned so much from him. John Waddell, who I did an internship with and still continues to be a great mentor to me, great example of what it means to be a good human being, a good family man, and a good veterinarian. And yes, you can do all those things simultaneously. And then here at Carthage, really our entire vet team. I would be remiss if I started naming them, because I'd forget one. But the ownership group here at Carthage, our management company, and the executive team there, the senior leadership team, Bo Peterson, our CEO here at Carthage, Brianne Skeen, Marcy DeMitt, our controller, a whole bunch of folks that maybe are behind the scenes for some of our producers, but that inspire me every day to be the best that I can be. And while I'm running down the laundry list, my family, my wife, Allie, who has been amazingly supportive of my career. Every time I've been in a tough situation work-wise, she's always let me help out as much as I needed to at work, and never made me feel guilty about that. And then my kids, Jake and Nina, who always are a wonderful thing to come home to when you've had a bad day of dealing with those PED pigs, those perv pigs. They remind you what you're doing it for when you come home and spend time with family.
Yeah, the old saying, it takes a tribe to raise an Indian, and I think that's true of most of us. We have many, many, many people along our journey that have helped us, and maybe in different ways and different methods, but they've all played a part in growing the people that we are today. So very good, very good. And last, what do you think are some of the characteristics that would define successful people in your industry, in your line of work, veterinarian? What are some of the characteristics that successful people have?
I think being a good listener is first and foremost. Seek first to understand before you seek to be understood, right? If you walk in and you think you've already got the diagnosis before you ever walk in the barn, you're probably going to look silly. So listen to the pigs, listen to the people, listen to the barn. Take all of that in and have a little bit of patience before coming up with an action plan. You got to have an action plan, but having the right action plan is more important than having the first action plan. Be more results oriented than action oriented.
Absolutely.
And we talked about it a little bit before, Jerry, but for a pig veterinarian to separate yourself, you've got to understand the economics of this business. There's four things the pig vet does: biosecurity, disease control and treatment, regulatory compliance, food safety and animal welfare, and then doing it on a budget, the vet med budget. I can be the best vet in the world if you give me an unlimited budget for biosecurity, for vaccines and medication, right? For the perfect regulatory compliance program. But really what separates you as a veterinarian and your value proposition is the ability to deliver high quality recommendations in all those areas that are also competitively priced, that don't blow the budget and optimize the health to that particular client. I think that's probably the best piece of advice I would give for a vet, is understand the economics of your recommendations from all angles.
Yeah, to your point, it's at the end of the day, we don't have unlimited resources, so we have to pick those areas and use our resources wisely, because they're getting more precious and precious as we go, with all the financial crises that we have, it seemed to have had the last couple of years, and so yeah, we definitely don't want to spend money where we could get by with a little something, and we want to get the best bang for a buck in all areas. But truly a good being able to have your background and having that experience and understanding, economics and how that plays into your decisions is key to being successful.
We dream, Jerry, of in farming, passing it down to the next generation, right? And the only way you can do that is if it's economically sustainable.
That's right. Yeah, we've got to. We're not going to exist if we're not sustainable, and we're not going to pass on. Those. We want, and all of us, I think, all farmers we care about our animals, we care about our land. We want to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, we also want to stay in business, and there's got to be a balance there where, they can ask us to give more space or to a sow, and we're happy to do that. We want to improve animal welfare, health, but we also want to be scientific about it and understand that there's data behind that decision, and we're not just doing something just create a burden for a producer.
That's right.
So I think that's where most producers are, and where most vets are. All of us want to have better animal welfare, and we want to improve the health. So it's very good. Well, Mr. Clayton, I appreciate your time. This has been really informative. I know our viewers will get a lot out of this, and just a lot of good gold nuggets I think we can take today and apply to just understanding people, understanding our animals, and being able to take better care of them. So very good. I appreciate your time, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Jerry. My pleasure to be on.